As well as physically bringing images from our storage card from our camera onto our computer via Lightroom and the catalogue, we're also going to have images on our computer already that we may want to use as well. Now I've got one set of images and I've copied them into my raw images folder. If we open that up, we can be reminded we've got the 2014 folder we created in an earlier section, and within that I've got my 2014 Lightroom catalogue, and I've also got all of the different locations we've been and we've imported images. But there's another folder here, and as you can see I've called them World War I scans, and that's exactly what they are. They're images that I've created on a flatbed scanner. Now the reason I'm including these in my raw files is because although they've been scanned, I've not done any work on them, so for all intents and purposes they are original images. So what I want to do is to bring them in. They were created in 2014, so they need to go into the 2014 catalogue as well. So let's open up Lightroom and go through the process. We start this process by going back to our import button, exactly the same as when we're importing images from a card, but we will see a difference when we click that button. First of all, if you remember before, we had all of the thumbnails appear in the center of the screen, and you'll notice there's a difference to the left hand side as well. Well, of course, Lightroom doesn't have a batch of thumbnails to show us yet because it doesn't know where they're located on our PC. And the section on the left is the file tree, which is basically inviting us to take it to where the images are. But just before we do that, let's look at the top of the screen, because now we've got the option to change any one of the four options at the top. We can copy these images in, so if they were located on a different drive or a different location, we can copy them as a DNG. We can copy them to the location we want in the normal way, in other words, keeping the file type exactly as it currently is. We can move them, but in our case they're already in the right place because I've done that manually, so I'm going to choose Add, and you'll notice something changed on the right hand side, and we'll come back to that in a few moments. So what we need to do is to navigate to where the images are. Let's tuck the C drive away because we don't have anything on there. But we do have something on our photography drive, and if we open up our raw images and our 2014, now when we click here, all of the thumbnails that we want to import suddenly appear in front of us. Going over to the right hand side to make decisions on what we want Lightroom to do when these images are added to our catalogue, we'll find we've only got two options rather than the normal four. And that's because these images are already named and they're already in the right location, so we don't have quite as many options as we did before. But let's take them from the top and go to the file handling. I've already mentioned building previews. We're not going to change that, and I've already mentioned a little bit about building smart previews, so we don't need to mention that. I did neglect to say anything about making suspected duplicates last time, but it's just a personal preference. I generally tick this to make sure that if I do import half a card of images and then shoot some more, when I import the rest, I don't end up with a load of duplicates. And of course we've already talked about making a second copy to an external drive, an internal drive, anywhere we choose. So we don't have too much to change there. In the next section we can choose to develop settings as before, but we don't want to do that with these images. We can apply metadata to these exactly the same, even though they're flatbed scans. And we can also apply keywords. Now I'm just going to use World War I as the keywords here, but of course we could use scans if we do quite a bit of this work. This is quite unique to me. I rarely do this sort of thing and actually borrowed a scanner to scan these images, so I'm not likely to do a great deal more. So perhaps the keyword World War I will be sufficient. Don't need any other information, we just need to click to import. And the one thing you'll notice is how quick this is. because it's not having to copy images from a card to our computer. They're already there, it just has to catalogue them. Now remember, as usual, we get to see, or we're shown, the previous import, which is the import we've just made. But at any time we can go to all photographs and we can see absolutely every photograph we have. And if I whiz down, you can see all of those that I've brought into Lightroom, some from the card and now some from the flatbed scanner. The only thing I really need to do now is maybe go through this process once more, because if you remember, in my photography drive I do have a folder with quite a number of finished images. But you may also remember that I created a separate catalogue. So what I'm going to do here is switch catalogues. File, Open Catalogue. I'm going to go to my photography drive, Finished Images, 2014 Finished Catalogue. There's the one I want. Relaunch. Wait a few seconds. There you can see the catalogue briefly shown to us at the top. And the reason I want to open this up is because I want to bring in those finished images. Now this is going to be a fairly quick process, so we'll work through one of them and then I'll do the others off camera. So import image. Once again we're going to get exactly the same as what we had with our flatbed scanner. Here I need to go back to my photography drive though and go to my finished images 2014, and we'll start at the top with the images for April. Now the difference here are these are all images that have been worked through Camera Raw. I have done all of the work that I want to do on these, so these are completely finished images that I've stored on my computer. So all I need to do here is to move over to the right hand side, and I can't really say too much more here than I said for the flatbed scans. Nothing's going to change in the file handling at all. So we only really need to concern ourselves with apply during import here. Certainly don't want to add any other settings to completed images. Yes, of course I want to add my metadata. All I may need to decide is if I'm going to give these any keywords. Now because I store my finished images in folders dated for the month they were created, I think I'm going to use a keyword to denote that. So all I'm going to put in here is April. Remember, we'd need to open up our 2014 catalogue for our completed images, and then we will see the keywords at some stage and we would be able to quickly look into the images we created in April and any other months we completed some. So I'm going to hit the enter key to commit that keyword and once again go through the operation to import the images. And again we see everything happens rather fast for the reasons I explained a few moments ago. Now that's all there is to adding existing images to Lightroom's catalogue. Just bear in mind that when we click to import the images, you do need to choose one of these options up here. So if you are copying the images from an external drive, then you may want to choose copy. If you're just moving the images from another location on your computer, you have that option too. But in our case, we put the images in the correct location, so all we needed to do was to add them. To bring this section of video to a close, if we just look over on the left hand side here for a moment, we can see that in my photography drive I now have 122 images which have been added to the catalogue for April, 14 for July, 75 for June, 102 for March, and they add up to 313 in total. Earlier on in a previous video I mentioned that if we make more than one catalogue, it may alleviate the problem of having too many images in one catalogue, so when we do a search we get too many images to view. And perhaps we could get a first idea of what I mean here. If I select my all photographs section and I'll drop the thumbnail size down so we don't have to scroll so far, but in 6 months of this year or a little over, those are the images that I've completed. Now compared to the images that I've taken, that's a small fraction, but nevertheless there's quite a few images there. So you can see that if we put some search parameters into the areas we need to search, we could throw up more images than we can reasonably cope with. Now hopefully I've got the best of all worlds here, because if I was browsing through my completed images, what I can do is firstly put my thumbnails at a reasonable size, a size that I find comfortable, but I can now skip from month to month and I can scroll down just my April images, my July images, and so on. One thing you'll notice with a couple of these images, it seems to have a little marker on the bottom right and a series of stars here. We're going to explain what they are in a following video.